Have you ever wondered what is feminism? Who are feminists? What do they even want? What is their agenda? Care to know more? Then continue watching and you'll meet my feminist friends from all around the world.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. So, who is a feminist?
A feminist is a person who identifies with women's problems, who sees a problem actually in the world, because many women are comfortable the way they are. They just view themselves and their situation, they're situated in their own bubble. Being a feminist means that you look out of your bubble. Even if you don't have any problems, you look outside the bubble, recognize other women's problems, and somehow try and seek to change these problems, or at least be aware of them.
In my point of view, I think any person who identifies as a feminist, or even if doesn't identify but feels like I want to fight against oppression, I want to fight for equality, for sustainability, for all these important issues that we face in the world now. But of course, I think you first need to know the agenda. What is to be a feminist, and what is all this fuss is about, why these women are fighting so hard for their rights. So both men and women, non-binary, whatever, if you want to fight alongside us, I think you are most welcome, but then you need to understand the agenda and fight alongside us without any prejudice, or without even understanding what is to be a feminist.
It's a very common issue. A lot of men would definitely ask, is it possible for a man to be a feminist, in your opinion?
I think yes, until the point this man doesn't want to take over or to appear more than a woman. So it is important to understand, yes, this is a fight led by women because they feel all these gender patterns that they suffer in their lives. So yes, we need both men and women. So in one hand, I think that if we exclude men from the fight, we can never get along with this. But on the other hand, if men want only to come to take over, or not to understand the fight, or not even to be respectful for these women that are fighting, I don't think there is enough conversation in it. So I think it's a matter of a dialogue, an open dialogue between men and women, and then you can have men fighting alongside you and putting their voices on the positions of power, for example, that they now have, and hopefully we will be in more positions of power in the future.
I would say for me a key component of being a feminist is just quite simple, like just recognizing hierarchies, not only between genders but between races and classes, sexual orientations. I think that's a key component for me. That's probably my best answer.
For me, I think a feminist is someone who supports the idea of all people being equal in terms of political rights, social rights, economic rights, and I think not only does that person support those ideas, but also tries to live it out as best they can. So obviously putting action behind the words too, so in the way they live their life and the types of brands or people they support, that they're kind of really living out that idea of everyone being equal regardless of things such as race or gender identity or whatever it might be. So that's what it means for me.
I think definitely someone that wants equality or wants fairness, I would say. So not necessarily just a female or a woman, but a man also can be a feminist. And not necessarily just a person that, it's on the streets and doing big manifestations or gestures, but I think it's also about your daily life and your how do you behave and how do you think about stuff when in your daily life. So, for example, when, I don't know, we just had Carnival in Brazil, and it's about the discussions of how you're going to dress up to the carnival, and we had just this discussion of, for example, not wearing black features, and I think that it's important to discuss that in every situation. So it's not only about, oh no, equality in salary, for example, which is a big thing, but also, you know, in small things, and that sometimes we just don't pay attention to it. So for me, a feminist is someone that is trying all the time to pay attention to this unfairness of the world, even if it does not affect oneself. So, for example, as being a white and think about racism and a black woman. So that's it.
Tell me your story. What brought you to feminism?
When I was an undergraduate, I didn't know anything really about feminism, but I took a political science class called Global Feminisms, which looked at, I guess, feminism around the world. So that was kind of my introduction, and I found it really interesting, but I never studied feminism particularly, like as an undergraduate, and then my first master's was in international affairs, so a lot of what we looked at, like certain parts of the class might focus on gender, so it might be like warfare and gender, or security and gender, or development and gender, but it was never the main focus. But I found that a lot of my either like final projects or research topics would kind of use gender as a lens through which to look at certain papers, so I realized that perhaps it's an area of interest for me, and so that's kind of how I ended up here. And then also, you know, personally, both in my life and the lives of other people, there have been different issues that have come up that have kind of drawn me to feminism as well. So mixed.
Okay, well, what brought me to feminism was misogyny, was violence and fear, and all these gender patterns that I suffered in my life, and I saw that all my female friends were suffering too. So every time I spoke to my friends, I am afraid of walking in the streets, I am afraid of speaking what I want to speak, or behaving in the way I wanted, or dressing myself in the way I would like to. And all these small patterns, it brings you to be a woman full of fear. And in my country, I am a Latina woman, so in Brazil, we fear all these small patterns of our everyday routine. So then I simply got fed up with all this fear I faced every day, and I wanted to understand why, because it's not only me, I'm not the only one who is suffering this. All my friends, my female friends especially, and my gay friends, they are suffering the same. And then I met Chimamanda, I met Angela Davis, I met Carla Cristina Garcia, all these incredible women that was talking about something called feminism. And here I am. So yes, this is my story.
You embarked on this journey.
Yeah.
It was actually quite a specific event. There was this trial in Northern Ireland a few years ago about an Ulster rugby player who was accused of raping a woman, and the evidence against him piled up so high, but he was acquitted. And in Belfast, where I'm from, there was lots of like rallies and protests, and I went along to them, and they were really like inspiring. They were really great. And then from that, I joined a feminist group called Rosa. And then yeah, from there I just realised it was something I would really like to take further and to study and to devote a lot more of my time to.
What brought me to feminism is my need to be free. I felt like I was very restricted in the environment I was inside. So it's just an impulse. It's like you're a bird in a cage and you know the world is bigger and you try to free yourself.
Well, I think it was this need of fairness, you know, because it's interesting because ever since I was a kid, I could point out that it was some stuff was not fair, and that would bother me a lot. But I didn't have a word or how to express that. But I felt very injustice, and I would be pissed about it. And so I think that after I started working with women in situations of violence in relationships, I started to actually think about feminism and what actually, like, theories and this more, let's say, formal part. But I think that somehow I was already in the path, and I wouldn't call myself a feminist, but actually when I look now, I was, in my concept, I already was. So I think it was this need of fighting or demanding or just pointing out and saying this is not fair, we have to change and we have to do something about it.
What do you want to change in the world or in the country as a feminist?
That's such a broad question. I mean, if I thought about that if I was to write an essay about that, I would probably come up with so many things. But I mean, in Northern Ireland at the minute, it's different from the rest of the UK, and it's different from the rest of Ireland, in that we don't have abortion. Abortion is still illegal in most cases, and as is same-sex marriage. So those two things probably would be top of my list, my long list, if I were to think about it a lot longer.
Sure. Well, so as you know, I'm American, so there's a lot of things that I would like to change, but I think one of the most pressing issues right now has to do with both sexual violence and abortion rights. So I'm sure you're aware, but in a lot of the states in the US, they've started trying to restrict access to abortion and the time frame in which a woman can choose to have an abortion. So like, I think it was Alabama was the most recent, and they just passed a really, really restrictive law that basically makes abortion impossible unless the mother's life is deemed to be in danger. And so I think the main purpose of that is for anti-abortion activists, so to speak, is to overturn Roe versus Wade. So I think I'd really like to see action against that to protect women's right to choose, and also I think all people's rights to make their own decisions about their own bodies. So that, in terms of abortion rights, is something I'd really like to see, I guess not changed, but maintained in the US, to have that right. And then in terms of sexual violence, there was some work on, particularly on college campuses, preventing that type of violence. And with the new administration, that's kind of not only been not addressed, but also kind of been some of the rights and some of the progress towards that has been taken away almost. So those are two issues I'd really like to see fixed everywhere, or addressed everywhere, but particularly within the US.
I think, well, in my country, definitely one of the things that I would change is this how women is portrayed and it's seen. So we sexualize a lot. I think it's a problem that we have worldwide, but in Brazil I feel that it's very strong, the way that woman is put as an object all the time, and how, like, the consequences of it. So if you, or either you are in that position of the object, the sexual object, or if you get out of this position, you are demeaned, or you are, you are not a woman, and also you suffer consequences from it. So you suffer consequences of being a sexual object and of not being. So it's like you don't have a way out, and that definitely this is something that I would change. So for example, we just had this case of Neymar, and this is so typical, like, you cannot say that he hasn't raped or not the woman, but the first reaction of everybody is to say that she was just wanting his money, and that she was there sending photos of herself naked or whatever. So just judgmental thing already. So
Victim blaming.
yes, and it's like we are put in this position of objects, but as soon as we accept this position, or we play along, then we're also like, no, it's that, or whatever. So definitely this is one thing that I would change.
I think as a whole, not only my country, but as a whole, I think we all need to change the mindset. All these ancient thoughts about machismo and man's superiority, and all this naturalization we have about gender patterns, about gender roles. So I think the first thing for all of us is to think freely, because if we think freely, we have a good ground. It's the basic for we to try to fight and achieve the rest. And I think it all comes from education. So if you have education that is critical, that you are able to think upon what you're doing, why are you doing this, I think is the first thing, the first step, then to continue your fight and to get on with your agenda. Without any free thinking, it's not possible at all. It is just like trying to solve things but not really getting to the roots of the evil. And I think this is it. Yeah.
In your everyday practice, what do you see as the feminism ethics of life? Let's say, not the ideas, not the abstract notions, but what do you see as the everyday ethics? This is your ethics. You are doing that because you are a feminist. Can you give me some examples from your life in Brazil or from your life here?
Well, I think the first thing is about the kindness. Yeah, this is my personal ethics. I would always try to be as much as empathetic as possible and kind as possible, and not as a robotic thing, but because I'm feeling that, because I want the person in front of me to be, or to feel comfortable of speaking. Because sometimes you don't have anybody to speak. You think, okay, I cannot show my emotions, I cannot be as emotional as I am being now. And I don't like people restraining themselves just because of we have all this way of presenting ourselves, of being all the time. And yes, I think kindness and I don't know. It's something that is so embedded on my living experience now that is a bit difficult to tell. But yes, I think maybe helping all the time, maybe caring for people in a way that we are not really used to be cared, that we cannot find all the time.
In my specific context, that is the Arab context, I want women to be more ambitious, and I want them to be fighters because I know they're ambitious. I spoke to a lot of women in my circle and they want a lot of this life. They're aware that there's a lot in this life, but I want them to have the courage to change things, even though that means that they're gonna pay a high price. I want them to be willing to pay the price, and I'm still learning to pay the price.
How exactly can it be achieved for women to feel freer?
How is it? By changing the laws, by knowing their worth. After they know their worth, they can seek and ask for more freedom in the form of laws, legislations, and even in their small family circles, because these things are sublime. They can even assert themselves in these family micro circles.
How would you describe yourself as a feminist with 3 words?
Well, 3 words. I would say that I am very emotional. Okay, so this is 2. No, okay. I'm kidding. Emotional, definitely. Also, I would say that I am passionate, which is very close to emotional now that I think.
All right.
And the 3rd word that would describe me. I'm, how do you say that someone is a good listener?
Good listener.
Well, so another 2 words. So you see, I gave you 5 words.
I know. More than I asked.
I would like to say conscientious, although sometimes it's difficult to be, and collaborative, because I think that's really important, not working on your own, collaborating with other people, and then generally just caring. I think it's important to care.
You said that you need to be and you want to be collaborative. Why do you think that you won't be able to make all those changes yourself, individually? Why? What is the point?
I think it's just really important to not stay inside your own little bubble whenever it comes to, I suppose, anything, but particularly with like feminist academia. I think it's so important to like involve other people and involve other people's insights and experiences. Because, you know, if you're just listening to your own thoughts all the time, it's an echo chamber of what you already believe and what you already think. Whenever you have people around you who like challenge your beliefs, that's like so constructive. So that's why I think that.
Optimistic. I'm free, and I'm hopeful.
Okay, this is difficult, but I would say I'm confident, driven, and curious. And by curious, I mean more in terms of like learning and figuring out different things, if that makes sense. So an intellectual curiosity, maybe.
3 words. I would say that I'm a Southern angry feminist, even though most people would say not, but I think that in the South we have this anger inside of us, all this urgency, and I identify myself very much with the Southern agenda inside feminism.
What else? Apart from being angry feminist, what are the 2 words there?
I don't know. I like to think that I'm brave and brave enough to speak up and to try and fight against all this fear I feel in my everyday life. But also, I'm always trying to be kind to people, and I think these are the main words that would define my fight inside feminism. Yes, because I feel that in the world we are living in now, hate has spread over, so we need some kindness and love and affection.
Definitely.
Yes, so I think this is it, yeah.
What is your message to the world as a feminist?
Sure. Okay, work with me on this one. It's not articulated completely, but I think my message would be sometimes it's really hard to stay optimistic, and sometimes it feels like we're trying to make change, and what's the point, because there are people who are going to tell you that you're not right or tell you that things aren't going to change, and sometimes you have things like the abortion laws where you feel like you're almost moving backwards. But I think my message would be it's just really important to keep trying to change things and keep trying to fight and push forward, and sometimes change is really slow, which can be frustrating, but I think if you're working towards it and you're working with other people towards the same goal, that eventually we can at least do something and make some kind of progress.
My message to the world: seek beyond. Seek beyond your limits. Ask for more. You'll not regret it. There's nothing to lose.
I'd say more love and empathy. No, I think that if people could just put aside your judgments and just try to look the world and try to look the other with empathy and trying to put themselves in the place of the other person, it is already a beginning that would change everything. Because what I feel also in my experience now, in this political moment that we're living in Brazil, it's so much hatred, and you know, with gays and lesbians and women and black people. So it's something that I always think, like, these people, they don't have compassion, or they're just looking for the ways that they are used to, and they cannot just put themselves in the other way and just not try to shift their position. So I would say that, you know, love more and have more empathy, and and then see if you can just stay as you are, or if you're definitely we're going to want something to change.
I would say now that everybody, identifying as a feminist or not, I think we all need to stand up now. We need to engage with people, we need to discuss ideas, we need to create ideas, we need to plan meetings and then create forums and be together. We need to stop a little bit with our smartphones for a while and get together really in person and feel together and plan together, and then after you have all these plans and all these ideas and all the dreams coming up, put in the paper, go for it, act, because we need clever and brilliant and lovely people in power now. As I said in the beginning, we have so much hate going on at the moment. We need people in power that has the ability to feel.
I don't have a message to the world. I don't think there is like one blanket message to the whole world, because you know, everyone's experiences are so interlocked with all the different things that they have in their lives. But I would say probably over the past few years or so, what I have, you know, maybe said to people or wanted to say to people, just really generally, like, don't be afraid to be political. I feel like, I don't know why, but a lot of the times whenever you're outwardly political and politically minded about things, it can be a little bit of a turn off for people and unappealing. And I don't know why that is, because it's so important to be political and to think about things in a political way. So yeah, just don't be afraid to be political about things.
When it comes to being political, what exactly do you mean? Because we have this brave phrase, personal is political. So what do you mean? What do you imply?
I think political is a difficult word to define, but for me, whenever I use that word, mostly I think I'm referring to structural, just like the structure of things, like socially and economically. Don't be afraid to tie things that go on into your life into those like larger frameworks, because you know, how else are you going to make sense of the world if you don't? I don't know.
All right, thank you very much. Let me ask you one last question. How is feminism perceived in Northern Ireland?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, I think everywhere, to a certain extent, whenever you talk about feminism or say that you're a feminist or that you study feminism, you know, you expect something of an eye roll from people, you know, like, oh, here we go, you know.
I know.
Like, it's just kind of the way it is now. It's a bit funny. So there's definitely some of that in Northern Ireland, but because feminism in Northern Ireland is still so connected to like big issues like abortion laws and like same-sex marriage, because it's so intertwined with those two issues that get a lot of media coverage, etc., and have a lot of people behind them. I think feminism maybe has a better reception than in other places because of that. Yeah, maybe. But always have the eye rolls. Always expect the eye rolls.
Really?
Yeah.
You experienced that yourself?
Oh yeah. Always. It's whenever I tell people what I study, women's and gender studies. I mean, it's one way or the other how people will take it. It's either like, that is so cool, or else it's like, what? You know, like, is that even a degree? Do you know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
So I'm sure you've experienced a lot of that as well.
Very many times.
So yeah, I think it can go two ways, and that's probably broadly describes the reception to feminism in general in Northern Ireland as well. It can go one of two ways.
With time.
Hopefully.
Yes. I think it's going to be really interesting just to watch this video in 5 years time.
I know.
And see whether we have the same concerns, whether we have the same beliefs, ideas, what we would be doing in 5 years, things like that.
And hopefully a lot of things will have changed.
Yes, for better. I hope for better, because we would have 5 years ago that was an issue, but thankfully it's not anymore.
Yeah.
So I hope it's going to happen. As a feminist, where do you see yourself in 5 years? If you close your eyes and you think about it, if you watch this interview in 5 years, where would you like to be?
Probably in a position of power, but no one that will corrupt me, because it's very easy to be corrupted by power. But trying to engage with all these ethics and all these goals and dreams I have for equality, for sustainability, for caring with our environment, and to caring with people, because we are all in this planet and we have to be aware that we are nature and nature are us. So all this agenda we have now in politics, they are our agenda as well as feminists. So I will be in that position of maybe creating plans and ideas to stop all this crisis, or even just to help with the crisis we are facing now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, it was a pleasure.
Where do you see yourself as a feminist in 5 years?
I see myself having more rights, having all the control I need over my own life, and just trying to find out who I am and being myself and reaching the goals with less obstacles. At least less obstacles that society imposes. I'm not asking for a utopia world, but at least obstacles that a man won't have to face. I will not have them either.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I hope this is going to be a very beautiful video.
No.
In some time, I mean, in a year or two, it will be very interesting to remember everyone in this way. Asking these questions. What is feminism for you? Why are you a feminist? What is your agenda? Things like that. And then, 5 years ago I thought that. So it's a memory.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I don't have this habit of having things for a long time and then looking back and looking, wow.
I know, me too. Like sometimes just the idea would come up and it's totally different from what you have 5 years ago.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
normal because we're evolving, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's good that it's
good.
It's good if you identify that, ooh, well, I'm glad that I changed this.
Yeah. The person says, oh my goodness, I look really well 5 years ago. And even back then, I thought that I was too fat. How could it be so?
This is always.
Every single time you think, oh, I need to lose weight.
Now definitely. Now, 5 years ago.
And I was a hot girl. Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. All right. Are we good? Yay. You look like so confident.
Do I? Oh my
you
god.
Look so confident.
I feel like my face is really sweaty.
Wouldn't be sane, wouldn't be sane.